In a stream not very long ago, I was paid a handsome sum to make a video about Naja Aldmera, my fan-made lost Primarch for Warhammer 40k. Well, I wasn't sure anyone was really that interested, but since someone is actually paying me to make this video, I might as well follow through. Now bear in mind that I am by no means an expert in Warhammer 40k lore. I don't play the tabletop game, I only study the lore because I think it's fascinating, and I'm working with what is mostly knowledge from treating it as an entertaining hobby. I know most of the basics and some details here and there, but I'm by no means an expert. There are lots of people way more knowledgeable about it than I am. If I get some lore, times, and dates wrong in this, please don't crucify me. It's all in good fun. That's mostly what Warhammer 40k is, right? So I hope y'all enjoy this. If you're not interested in Warhammer 40k, feel free to skip it, but I wanted to make this video because I was asked and paid to, so that's the reason for this video being made. But I also really kind of liked making Naja Aldmera, so here we go. Here's the summary of Naja Aldmera. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy what you hear. From a conversation between the Emperor of Mankind and Malcador the Hero, at the time Malcador the Sigillite, the Emperor said, "They shall be my sons, and in them will live the hopes of a unified humanity. Theirs will be the strength to prevail, not only when victory lies within easy reach, but even when it seems unattainable. When doom settles like a shroud all about, in those times of darkness my noble sons will shine the brightest of all." Malcador looked and said, "What of this one?" Placing his hand upon the pod to his right, the Emperor turned his gaze upon that engraved with the emblem 11. "Is this one also your son?" Malcador asked, a smirk upon his face. "It seems that you again find need to correct my words, Malcador," the Emperor chuckled, as he too ran his glorious hand along the pod. "Perhaps rather than sons, I should instead say children." When the Emperor designed the Primarchs, he dreamed of the great promise they held for humanity and its place in the stars. Demigods, one and all, leaders of legions of superhumans to conquer the stars, to bring peace to the broken empire of man, and to unify humanity once more under a single banner. A glorious and prosperous future awaited their race and the Imperium. But everything changed when the forces of chaos whisked away the infant Primarchs to all corners of the galaxy on different planets. The Emperor, in his wisdom and bravery and adaptability, sought to find his lost children and bring them back under his wing. Of the 20 Primarchs, 2 are counted as lost, the reason for which is known only to a few, and those few are sworn to be never spoken of. Even mentioning them could be considered a heresy. These are the 2nd Legion and the 11th Legion. And the Primarch of the 11th Legion we shall now discuss. This was Naja Aldmera, the Queen Cobra and the master of the Basilisk Legion of Space Marines. She is the only Primarch to have been called the daughter of the Emperor. In terms of size, appearance, and power, Naja Aldmera is a goddess in every respect. Her height is near 10 feet tall, and her frame is that of a giantess. Her hair wild and free, and her skin fair and near glowing to the onlooker. Behind her lips rest glistening white teeth and a pair of fangs filled with a toxin known only to her. Her eyes, gold and serpentine, mark her as frightening and as the queen of serpents. All of her Astartes that follow her, that go through the genetic modifications, emerge bearing the same eyes, but none as potent as their mother. Her weapon of choice is the Viper, a long glaive that has been the bane of enemies of man throughout the galaxy. She's not as strong as most of her brothers. She is not as tactically gifted, but she is cunning, and that makes up for a lot. When she was discovered in the lush jungle world of Nathair, she was already the acting ruling monarch of the planet. Nathair was a planet that, upon her arrival, was beset by 3 warring factions seeking dominion of the planet's throne: the Aldmera, the Crutani, and the Scray. Naja was discovered by a nobleman of the Aldmera kingdom. Recognizing the baby as strange but beautiful, he thought her a divine sign and took her as his own. The 3-way war continued into Naja's teenage years, but after the man who fathered her was killed in one of the ensuing battles, Naja's patience wore out. So she gathered her friends, her relatives, and fellow warriors of Aldmera to her side and rallied to end the war for good. In a great battle that lasted 3 days, Naja emerged victorious. Rather than exterminate the 2 other factions, though, she ordered them to lay down their arms, to join with her and reunify the land under the banner of Aldmera. The planet slowly began to move into an era of peace and prosperity, and things seemed well enough, until at last the Emperor himself arrived on Nethair to retrieve his daughter. Naja had always been very adept at feeling the warp and the currents shifting within it. She'd been sensing for weeks that something powerful was coming, something familiar, and yet so unfamiliar all at once. Seeing the Emperor for the first time humbled Naja, who had never met someone quite so glorious in all her life. He hardly needed to call her his daughter, for she knew instantly that she must be. The Emperor shared with her his dreams for humanity, unifying the stars and leading mankind to dominate the universe. Naja was enamored with the prospect of bringing peace to the galaxy, just as she had brought peace to her homeworld. The Emperor asked her to join him, and she accepted the invitation. Leaving a trusted friend to rule Aldmera in her place, Naja would leave with the Emperor to Terra to discover her real homeworld, as well as to meet a few of her brothers. Naja was also presented with her own legion, which she named the Basilisk Legion, all of them women, and all of them made from the gene seed of their mother Primarch. Now Naja, when ruling Nethair, had an honor guard of sisters who yearned to join her and become Astartes themselves. The Emperor warned that the process would be dangerous and even lethal for those of older years, but if they were determined, he would not stop them from joining, if Naja wished it, of course. And of the 18 women who volunteered, only 8 survived. They were known as the 8 Orochi Guard, the 8-headed serpent, powerful, trusted, and devoted to Naja, who trusted them above her other legion soldiers as she had known them since her youth. But she loved all of her children. Now, Naja's first meeting with the other Primarchs was remarkably different than what she'd anticipated. She imagined them all like her, but that was not quite the case. Naja dreamed of peace, bringing an end to war and suffering across the galaxy, just as she had done on Nethair. But she found that many of the other Primarchs were not quite so peace-loving as she was. She met Horus Lupercal, Sanguinius, Rogel Dorn, Portarabo, and Lorgar. But it would be her encounter with Leman Russ of the Space Wolves that had the largest impact on her. Leman Russ, unable to contain his laughter at the sight of his sister amongst them, mockingly called Naja out, as if she really intended to join them in battle. Unwilling to shrink back from a challenge, Naja asked Russ what she must do to prove herself to him. Teasingly, he tapped his own cheek in response, daring her to strike him, which she did. It is said to this day that the resounding impact of that strike can be felt in the jaw of every new Space Marine upon initiation into the Legion, as Russ was thrown clear. But he rallied, in what resulted in a furious battle between Viper and Wolf that required the combined efforts of Sanguinius and Rogel Dorn to separate them. Ever since, the Space Wolves and the Basilisk share a healthy rivalry. Though Russ always mocked or joked about her, he was one of the saddest upon learning of Naja being stricken from the annals of the Imperium, so it can be assumed that he did respect her. Naja was closest to Sanguinius, and Horus most of all, her brothers in whom she confided in closely. Horus called her Little Serpent, and Horus was the only Primarch who she called her Big Brother, for she admired the skills, leadership, and strength of Horus, which all surpassed her. Sanguinius became her mentor. For the first few years of their campaigns, she tagged along with Sanguinius, sharing in his battles and learning the ways of the Imperium, of the Primarchs, and of their father. She enjoyed her time with both Sanguinius and Horus. But Naja was always intensely suspicious of and distrusting of some of the Primarchs, particularly Portarabo. The Primarch of the Iron Warriors referred to Naja as an emotionally compromised liability. She sought to prove him wrong, but no action she took ever changed his opinion. He was as unshakable as his namesake. But it was also Portarabo who exposed a dark secret about Naja and her Astartes. A secret that would alter the course of her campaign, and her loyalty to the Imperium. Naja was unusually in tune with the warp, not to the extent of her brother Magnus, but she was a competent psyker in her own right. Many of her Astartes, as a result, were also rather in touch with the warp. However, there seemed to be a certain flaw in their gene seed, and their connection to the warp had a frightening effect on a few. During a battle against an orc invasion on a planet, fighting alongside the Iron Warriors, Perturabo observed that, under extreme pressure, or when overusing her psyker powers, some of the Basilisk Psykers would suddenly turn to stone before his eyes, as if the warp itself were recoiling against them and turning them to rock. Naja was mortified by what Perturabo did next. He orders his soldiers to withdraw so the Basilisk Legion would face the majority of the orc advance. The Basilisks were overwhelmed, and many Psykers attempted to provide aid, only to turn to stone in the process. Once a fair many turned to stone, the Iron Warriors returned to the battle, using the statues of the Basilisk Legion as cover. Perturabo had coldly used the Gene Seed Flaw to provide his own soldiers with cover and a tactical advantage. Naja was livid, developing an incredible hatred for Perturabo. But she could not bring charges against him for fear of exposing this flaw to the rest of her brothers and to the Emperor, who she was deeply afraid would demand the extermination of her legion and recreating of it. Naja would carefully guard this secret about her children. Until one fateful war. Naja, as well as many of her brothers, were called to partake in the Rangdan genocides in the late 30th millennia. In 929 M30, a massive warp rift rocketed the battlefield. The Basilisk Legion Psykers rushed to use their powers to withstand it, only for nearly 40% of all of them to turn to stone. There was no hiding this incident. It had been seen by her brothers and by the Emperor himself. Naja was horror-struck. Saddened by the loss of her children, and in need of answers, Naja withdrew from the campaign to tend to her legion's losses, and feared when the Emperor would call her to hold her accountable for this incident. She desperately sought the counsel of her brother Horus, but he was busy in an engagement of his own. She reached out to the only other Primarch who might speak kind words to her, Lorgar. Lorgar was not as strong as her, but he was good with diction and always soft-spoken. He had a way of easing minds, so she thought perhaps in this case he could speak some good advice or peace to her. But Lorgar was, it seems, busy at the time, for she received a response from his trusted first chaplain, Erebus. Erebus showed great sympathy to Naja and gave her the only advice he could offer in such desperate times. The Emperor would surely be furious and order the Basilisk Legion disbanded at the very least, if not exterminated. Her best option was to flee into the warp itself, to seek answers to her legion's condition within the realm that had bestowed this curse upon them in the first place. Surely if she seeks the answers within the warp, she will find an answer and return renewed, and she will surely please the Emperor in the process. Naja was thrilled with the suggestion, and though it pained her to do this, she left a final message for her brothers Horus and Sanguinius before launching her fleet into the warp to escape her father's wrath and to uncover a cure for her legion. Her message read, "My brother Horus, I pray you forgive your foolish sister for her secrecy. We do not keep secrets from each other. That was the first thing we agreed, yes? But I have kept one from you, and even farther. My legion is sick. A genetic abnormality afflicts my beloved daughters. Father would not, nay, he could not understand. He is perfection, and he demands perfection from us. How can I confront him? How could he still call me his daughter and my legion his soldiers if we are so irrevocably flawed? Under the advice of Erebus, first chaplain of Lorgar's legions, I am taking my children to the warp to seek a cure. Do not worry for me, dear brother. You are stronger than us all, and wiser too. The great crusade will succeed with you and Father spearheading it, even if I am not there to see it at its end. I only ask that, upon my return, you still think fondly of me, for our friendship has always meant a great deal to me, and I beg your forgiveness." Horus delivered this message to the Emperor. Saddened by her decision, the Emperor held a private meeting with Malcador the Sigillite, his close friend and advisor. Malcador, wise and noble, pointed out it was possible that, while in the warp, Naja would become tainted by the powers of chaos, if she wasn't tainted already. The Emperor didn't want to believe that possible, but he had to accept that as a possible outcome as well. And so, to protect the Imperium and her honor, he struck Naja's name from the annals. Horus was appalled and begged to know why the Emperor had done this. Why not send the wolves after her, or have Magnus attempt to contact her through the warp? The Emperor refused to answer, and simply stated it was the way it must be, and made Horus swear to never speak of Naja again. Time in the warp functions differently than in the real world, though it felt like only a century. When Naja finally returned from her pilgrimage, she returned to a galaxy divided, a galaxy she barely recognized. It was now nearing the 42nd millennium. Receiving a distress signal from a nearby world she was unfamiliar with, she landed to find remnants of the Blood Angels locked in combat with an alien race she'd never seen of blue skin and purple blood. The arrival of her forces shocked the Blood Angels and terrorized the Tau, who had not seen their like before. But her arrival had been reported to the Inquisition and to Terra itself. Not long after her return, the Inquisition had dispatched the Grey Knights to apprehend her on grounds of heresy. A lost Primarch was not ever to be mentioned, let alone simply reappear. However, the Inquisition's grasp was countermanded by another command, one from High Terra itself, from Rabute Guilliman. The reunion of Guilliman and Aldmera was one of bitterness and confusion. Guilliman demanded to know where Naja had been and why she had vanished. Naja wanted to know what had become of the galaxy in her time away. The explanation given to her drove her to near madness. A heresy. A treason. Half of her brothers turned to the ruinous powers and the other half dead or lost like her. The galaxy that she had dreamed of bringing peace to, of reunifying, of making beautiful, was now torn asunder. But the news that crushed her greatest of all was that it was Horus who had spearheaded the treachery. Horus, her dear brother. He had been named the War Master by the Emperor, a logical choice to Naja's thinking, but she knew Horus. She knew of his insecurities, his fears, his feelings, how heavy the burden must have been. How had he felt in his final moments when the Emperor destroyed him, mind, body, and soul? Those final moments of revelation, of realization, and of pain. It brought her to tears, and she then demanded to see her father. Only Guilliman and Naja were in the throne room to behold the God Emperor's corpse. None could hear the conversation, but the rage, the pain, the agony, and the despair, all of it did not need to be heard, for it could be felt. Naja fasted for a week. She did not leave the throne room, nor did she return to her legion, which waited patiently on Terra for her return. None knew what was said between her and the Emperor. But what is known is that when she emerged, she asked her brother Guilliman for permission to seek out her lost brothers. "Your place is with the Imperium, brother," Naja had argued, "but mine is not here. I abandoned the Imperium for my own selfish reasons. I will not make excuses, and I will not ask your understanding, only your forgiveness. I will atone in the only way I can. I will retrieve the lost. Send me forth to retrieve my brothers. I wish to make peace between us again." Guilliman warned against this. Many of the Primarchs that might still be loyal were either dead or so lost now it might be impossible to retrieve them. And for those fallen to chaos, they were devoted to new powers now. They would sooner corrupt her rather than listen to her. She had not seen what he had, what chaos was capable of doing to the Astartes. Naja was firm that they were still worth reaching if they could be reached, but conceded that she might need to learn the state of the galaxy before she went chasing ghosts. For now, though, Guilliman offered Naja the chance to show herself to the galaxy as the prodigal child. The lost daughter of the Emperor had returned, and as parades were held and feasts were offered across the galaxy, enemies of man stirred as well. Corrupting powers turned wary eyes towards the new viper that had slithered into their midst. Foes, ancient and new, bristled at Naja's return, and soon the galaxy would feel the weight of the Emperor's daughter and the Queen Cobra. Naja, in her naivete, still dreamed of bringing peace to this galaxy, just as she had done as a child back on her world. But if Naja dreamed of restoring peace to this destroyed, torn-apart galaxy, she would be sorely mistaken, for in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.